Okay, recording. All right, meeting has officially started.
Can, do you want me to do it on the Google Docs, like make a new Google Doc, or do you want
Yeah,
to?
sure. You can do the Google Docs since everybody can see it and edit it live.
Okay, I'm gonna do it on the same thing, but I'm gonna just add a page so that we can have it a collection of them together.
Cool.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey,
Making sure everyone can hear me. How does this mic sound?
loud.
Sounds good.
I figured. Is it too loud? Like, is it annoying loud?
No, I was just playing.
Okay, I got you. um, I don't have a nice backdrop like I see the bridge. Her room looks
Hey.
very nice. I don't have the nice backdrop, so I don't know about the camera today.
Hey,
I got.
just stick a picture in there, man. Just stick a picture in there.
I got you. Um, I wonder if I can upload it. So if I click off of this, you can still hear me and everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as your mic is hot. Yeah.
Okay, I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I got an insert.
This Zoom thing is pretty cool.
Definitely. I guess I'll have to figure out how to add a photo after we conclude
Yeah, you just go to
meeting.
your settings and then do your little personalization.
You think I can do it right now, or should
Yeah,
I
it
wait?
will let
Probably.
you do it. It will
Okay.
let you do it.
All right. Let me.
I don't know.
Because we don't see anything until you actually start sharing video. So.
You're gonna have to Let me see if it's in meeting settings. No, you're gonna have to leave and then come back
Yeah, I figure
into
that.
it.
So should I wait
It's up
until
to
like the
you.
next meeting?
It's up to you. I mean,
I didn't know if it like bothered anyone. That's why I was just trying to make sure.
No, you
nah,
good.
don't bother me.
At the bottom. I just want to add a new one at the bottom. I got it, but that's not how you do it in Word.
So it looks like there's 9 of us.
Okay, then do that.
All right. So Jordan is taking notes. Um, I think that in the chat, everyone can share their at least one favorite passage and their explanation as to why, what they like about the passage, so everyone can, capture that. Now, for the meeting notes, when the professor said to put in everybody's username, which username was he referring to? Is he talking about iCollege or?
I just put regular names because
Yeah, I figure he's gonna like just
you're
put first and last like.
for your dang, what was I finna say? Oh, for the forum, it's just your email. That's what I thought he was talking about.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was talking about as well.
So you think it would be better to put the email or the actual names?
I think it would be safer to just do our first and last names so there's no
Yeah, that's what
confusion.
I was thinking. Because like
Exactly, so
some
there's
people
no
have different
confusion.
numbers and yeah.
Yeah.
Now
And the
you
good
said
thing is, as I'm looking at it, even in Zoom, it's showing our names, not our email. So, yeah.
I mean, how you set up your little thing. I had mine from last semester when we had to go online.
so you said we're sharing one section. I figured since we were doing the 2 hour instead of the one that we were going to share more than one.
Oh, sure. If you have more than one, sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but at least
Um,
one, because it's due on the 25th, which
yeah,
is 2 weeks from now. Yeah.
yeah, 2 weeks.
So we're gonna have
Um,
another meeting on the 17th, another on the 24th.
okay, great.
We'll have 2 more meetings before we actually need to turn stuff in.
Yeah.
I'm I can go first if everyone's in here. I don't mind.
Let me
Sure,
get
Anton.
name typed on this Google Doc and then
Okay, I got you.
And how far did everyone go in terms of pages?
I just figured we were hitting the 75.
Yeah, that's what I went to. I did the end of the first chapter.
Yeah, I was doing it wrong, and I I had to go back and then start putting in my documentation every page. I wish I had done that when I started, so it slowed me down. I only got as far as 25.
Gotcha.
I didn't know that we were gonna read the intro too. I just kind of skipped the first chapter.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I had to
question.
go back and read the introduction too, because I didn't know we needed to read that.
So,
I just
question,
went
guys, are we supposed to put in our comments about the preface? Because I get the introduction. I did go back and start with the introduction, but the preface. Do we have to make comments on every page for the preface as well?
I would do it to be safe. I really don't understand why, because if we're doing the first 300 pages, like, I'd
Yeah,
figure
like
you
page
just do
one
the
starts
actual
where chapter one
chapters.
starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But seeing the forum, I would do it to be safe. Like, I'm gonna go back and do that.
Oh man.
I'm saying.
So, but technically, the page one of the preface, is that really page one?
No,
No, page one
page
started
one
with
is
like
chapter one.
chapter one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the introduction, right?
No, it starts
No,
with
it's
chapter one.
yeah.
In the
Oh,
book,
Like
wow.
page one
in
is
the
chapter one.
in like the physical book, the introduction is page one.
In
Yeah,
the
for
digital
me,
book, it
like,
shows that
I'm
page
sorry, you can
one is
continue.
chapter one.
So I have the physical book here, and so the first section is the preface to the 10th anniversary edition, because this is the 10th anniversary edition. It's got more stuff in it. Then after you get through that, which I didn't read by the way, I just skip on through. The next section of the book, the page sticking together.
Do you all think that we need to post in that forum and have him answer the question directly, specifically about the preface?
Then you
Yeah.
have the foreword. That's the next section.
Yeah,
Then you have
the
preface,
foreword
that's
and the
next
preface.
And then you get to the actual book, which the first chapter is called the introduction.
Introduction,
So I
yeah.
read that.
Yeah.
That's where I started. Because
Yeah.
here you have the title page, and then the next page is when the actual book starts. So I started there, but I skipped through all of the
Yeah, I
other
didn't do
junk.
any of that either.
Why is the front so thick though?
For real, that's
Alright.
what I'm saying. I'm like, there's no way that I'm supposed to be reading this part when the
Yeah.
pages are here.
No, that's a
It's
fact.
like that in the digital book too. It has like, I think like 40 pages before it even
Yeah,
starts.
I was scrolling for a while. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
so
this is like a reflection on the 10 years,
Okay.
Right.
basically. I didn't
So-
think we needed.
do you guys think that we need to post it in the forum directly for him to answer? Say, okay, you do not need to write any summary for the preface and the foreword. Just start from introduction.
I think we're fine at the introduction because I don't think it specifies what edition we need to be reading of the new Jim Crow. We just happen to pick up the 10th version. So if we had picked up the original version, it wouldn't have
It
had all
wouldn't
that
be
stuff.
there. Exactly.
Ah, I see
But
your
I
point.
think we're fine with just reading starting at the introduction.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might still message to ask, but that makes a lot of sense. Like, say if I went to like half price or resale books, like, and I bought the original version, it wouldn't have any, of the extra things. So
Yeah.
it would make sense
Well,
to just start there.
yeah, sure. But if anyone feels comfortable, yeah, sure. But if you still want to confirm, we can just add it to the forum and have him answer. We still have about 2 weeks to go before we turn it in. I had a rough start, and I think some other people did too. And for those who are ahead, kudos. But Jordan, have you been able to get yourself all set up?
Yeah, if everybody just go and check and make sure your name is in there. I spelled it right. I try my best. If I sent some people a message about their last name. Yeah,
Okay, let's see.
but y'all just bear with me. I'm not computer savvy.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
I just had to get somebody to come break this page for me because I didn't know how to add a new page.
Um,
I think I
Yeah.
have my Google Docs open. Where did it go? Let me refresh. And it's the same document. Okay, I see it. 910. Okay. Yay, you got my name right.
If anybody feels like they need to add something in there during the meeting, just feel free to do that.
So another, for clarification on the meeting notes, because we have to submit notes individually.
I wouldn't.
For,
I mean, I
I
go
don't
ahead.
think
know.
we're literally taking like, so say you go and say what you saw or what you thought was interesting. I would type in like I'll reread it to make sure I'm not just misleading everyone, but
Mhm.
Yeah, you write who attended, your thoughts on their passage that they shared, and then if they were engaged, then you
engaging,
get
yeah.
their read.
Yep.
Okay, so the
So,
notes that Jordan has taken, she's not really turning that in, right?
No, this is just
No,
like if we say anything that needs to be remembered or anything like that, you can.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But I mean, I don't know. I feel like if I write because everything that I say is not going to be interesting to everybody else, so it's not you just copy and paste it or like you know what I'm
Gotcha.
saying. But if you want me to create a format, I could do that, like on a piece of
Like the
paper.
recording helps too, because now we can hear, kind
Exactly.
of focus. We can kind of focus on the meeting and not really like, oh, let me pause and write what so and so wrote. So now that it's being recorded, we can go back and watch it like afterwards and be like, all right, this is their passage. This is what I thought about that, and actually got to think about it. So I think recording is going to
My
help a lot
thoughts
with that.
exactly. Because
Yeah.
it's gonna halt or slow down the meeting if we're constantly like, oh, well, what did you say? Like, so yeah,
Yeah, we
that's
have
what I
to be
was
like,
thinking
hold
too.
on for a second. Let me write what I think about you before we
Yeah,
move on.
exactly.
Yeah, that'll take forever.
Yeah.
Right.
So pretty much we can just, okay, gotcha.
So it's official. We're going to record all the meetings.
Yeah, I think that's best.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in case too, like say you have to leave or anything, and you really were engaging your first hour or your first 45, right? And you just don't know what everyone else said. Like, why fail or mess up that assignment grade when we could just
Right.
record it and you have everyone else's say so and input on the the book or the section.
Gotcha. Well,
as
I
long
don't
as
mind.
whoever,
I can volunteer to record every session since I already have it set up. So it's not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
I had a quick question about our reading notes. Are we supposed to? I'm looking at like the template that we were given, or not given, but one of you guys provided a template. Are we supposed to be turning one of those in for every like section or every book that we read as like our one assignment, or are we supposed to be turning 3 of those in for each of
No,
the?
I'm pretty sure it's just one
One per
for the
book.
one section because there's only just one on the 25th or
Yeah,
whenever the due date is for each section.
gotcha. So I only have to pick out 5 passages for this book.
Really, in my
Yes.
mind, like from the instructor's point of view, I feel like the book club is to make sure we're staying on track with the book and maybe engaging in some, thoughtful discussion or aspects of the book we might not have thought about so that we're staying on track up until, because there's going to be those people that wait until the day of to try and read 300 pages. You know what I mean?
That's
That's
crazy.
me. I'm that person.
You will find that that's hard. And take notes. That's hard. Well, not hard, more time consuming, I guess.
So we good to go?
I think so.
Did anyone want to start? If not, I'll start.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
start.
Go.
All right, let's get it. Um,
Quick question for those of us who are kind of at work and trying to do this at the same time,
I got you, girl.
and we may
That's
not be able to, read aloud and stuff. How would that work? Or is there, since they're going to be recorded, is there something else that we can contribute once we go back and watch it?
I'd say go ahead and copy your
ahead,
passage into the document, into our shared document. Go ahead and copy your passage and go ahead and post whatever paragraph you're going to put on your book assignment or the meeting notes. Just post that all in one chunk for us and we can discuss it on our own. But most of the time, I think we need to organize who needs to leave so that way they go first, right?
Yeah.
I agree.
Even if I know you guys said you're at work, like she recommended, if you put it in before the meeting, let's say you're really preoccupied and you don't remember, we could say, hey, da da da, you mentioned this about this, and then you could say your little two sentences or whatever on that specific part, if that makes sense.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, well, if that's the case, can I go first? I have a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine with me.
I'm going to just put it in the chat. Oh, it didn't work. Okay, the passage, I had screenshot it, but I guess it's not. So let's do it. The first one was on page 26. It was the second paragraph where it's the fact that some African Americans have gained experience, great success in recent years does not mean something akin to a racial caste system no longer exists. That paragraph, I think what stood out to me is that, especially this day and age, a lot of people are always saying how racism doesn't exist anymore. And, we had a black president or we had this, that, and the other. And I think that paragraph spoke to me because it was that passage, because it was just kind of just because, there are exceptions to, the rules, that it still exists.
So what you're saying in essence is it doesn't matter that one or a few people made it. The truth of the matter is, despite that, the problem still exists.
Basically, yeah, and that's what I got from that paragraph too. And I know right before it talks about Barack Obama and Oprah Winfrey, but that part really stood out to me. I had a couple of other passages too, but I guess we only needed to share one.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. I remember watching an interview. I think it was for sure Lil Wayne. I don't remember when, but he he got kind of upset and he looked whoever was interviewing him in the eye and he was like, "When I'm on the stage and I see all these white fans, I thought there was no such thing as racism," or some along the lines of that. And I just was in awe that somebody could be so oblivious to things that are happening in their own communities. And I don't just mean as a black person, because a lot of people do have that mindset of it doesn't matter that I'm black, I'm just worried about my family, da da da. That's cool, right? In his hometown, you know what I mean? It was surprising for me to. Now you could say we've taken steps to alleviate some of this, we made progress here, but to make such a bold claim or statement just off of anecdotal experiences was crazy to me, to say that there's no such thing as racism. So I
Right.
like
Yeah, I
that part
remember
as well.
that.
I remember it as well, but I think it's.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think sometimes it depends on a person's experience, individual experience, that can kind of change their thought process on, or either make them blind or make them, aware, whichever one. But I think I remember that interview because his child's mother or ex-wife was saying, because his life experience, that's why he feels that way. She was saying how a police officer, a white police officer, saved his life when he was a kid.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons why he probably feels that way. But I do believe that, there is some form of ignorance there or blindness there, because, as we all know, there is a such thing as racism. Just because you have a white audience doesn't mean, that it does not exist.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah,
You have to. I'm sorry, you can go.
Oh no, I was gonna say, and I think to kind of piggyback on that too, he like to be from New Orleans, like everything that New Orleans went through, especially with like Katrina and how they were saying like all this craziness went on and how the black community was treated through that. Like it's hard for me to believe like you're from this city and you're like, oh, racism. I didn't
Yeah.
see that racism don't exist. Or
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I completely understand. Like I talk about this with someone important in my life all the time about interpretive framework and how your circumstances could shape how you view or act or respond to different situations. So I definitely get that. I think he shot himself on accident, and all the people were rushing by him, the black people, and he said the white officer came and helped him.
Mm-hmm.
I completely understand that, but you got to think too, a thing that us as humanity we need to do a better job of is taking ourselves out of the situation and viewing things objectively, right? So in
Mm-hmm.
his subjective experience, excuse me, he had a experience that changed his life, and it reshaped how he thought about society. And he's like, well, a white officer, da da da, there is no racism, right? And that's fine, but you can't neglect the objective facts of this reality. You know what I mean? So I definitely get that, like how that could change them. But objectively, it's like just like she said with Katrina and a billion other things. Like let's acknowledge what's taking place outside of yourself.
And to
Exactly.
buttress Anton and Deja's point, I completely get it. And okay, yes, I'm black, but I'm also black and I'm African from Africa. I didn't leave until I was 18, 19. So I benefited from three different perspectives. I'm well traveled. I speak three languages. My wife speaks six languages. My wife is from Cameroon. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm living in the United States. And I've seen tribalism, and I've seen how it relates to racism. I've I didn't even think that criminal justice was a thing until I started paying attention some 6 years ago. And I didn't, the way I saw racism was completely different as it applies to me, just being a black person versus as it applies to a black American in America or a person of color in America or versus a colored person, a person of color in Europe. It is very different.
Yeah.
And when she starts referencing this new caste kind of system, it really does exist. And a lot of people are ignorant of what's going on, either because they've not been had the opportunity to get out of their comfort zone or get out of their environment. For instance, if you've never been out of your state or the city you live in all your life, you're going to share common values and beliefs and views of the people you know and that you identify with. For instance,
Oh yeah,
I
I think she
mean, there
talked
are
about that
people.
later in the book,
Yeah,
like towards the beginning of the first chapter, I think. And she was saying basically like some people they're more privileged than others. Obviously, like some blacks are they're more wealthy than others, and if they're like around their circle all the time, it's hard to see that racial inequality, because it's like, oh, all my friends are wealthy, so
Right. I think that once you reach a certain level of wealth and fame, no matter what color you are, but especially as an African American, I think that they follow by their own set of rules. That the whole, even if whether you are famous or not, once you reach a certain level of wealth, your environment change, the people you hang around change, the conversations change. So sometimes, if you've been wealthy for so long and your environment has been different for so long, sometimes you're so far removed from us regular people that your the problems sometimes change. And the only time that you are reminded of who you are is if you get pulled over or something. Then the reality sits in, like, you know what, I may be wealthy, but I'm still who I am.
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah. I second
yeah.
that. Or maybe you might be on the plane and someone spits at you, or someone
Uh-huh.
speaks to you in
Mm-hmm.
a condescending way, and you're like, "I'm in first class, just like you. I paid $5,000 for this seat."
Right.
The
And sometimes they'll wonder, how did you get there? Like, what are you doing? How did you get this ticket? Is it when did you
heck?
I mean,
So
it's a
yeah,
real thing.
I think a
I
prime
Prejudice,
example of that
ignorance,
too.
racism, it exists. It exists.
Right.
And it doesn't
I
matter
think
what class. Yeah.
OJ is a prime example of someone that got really rich and forgot they were black.
Oh.
And not
I'm
even
not
just
black.
talking
I'm
about
OJ.
But wait though.
yeah,
Wait though.
exactly. Like, and
Wait
that was
though.
before the murder charge. He was saying that, so
Right.
it was like
But
he
check
just
it
was
out
kind
though.
of like,
If that was me and not OJ, they would have shot me.
Sorry.
I wouldn't have gotten as far with that Jimmy. No. They had helicopters following for hours. It was on national TV. No.
I wanted to piggyback off of each of you guys' points real quick before we move on or whatever. I agree. 1,000%. Like even when we talk about distribution of wealth and whatnot, like black people as a whole, never mind us being like, the number one, if not one of the top consumers in the world, especially in America, but we only own 1% of the wealth. And within that 1%, I think there's like 16 colored billionaires. 4 of them are black or Hispanic. You know what I mean? So even when we talk about like the upper class, like what is the upper class? What do we define it as? Because even like the rappers and whatnot, like they're not really tapping into the wealth that like they don't have Jeff Bezos money. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
there's types of
They
money
don't.
that we can't even access.
Right. Some people think just because, even if you got 500,000 is not a lot of
Is
money.
at all.
So
Yeah,
they.
I mean, we're starting to talk about privilege now. There are
Mhm.
people that have hundreds of billions, and there are people that have that and they have power.
Mhm.
What they say could change stock prices. What they say
Mhm.
could determine who the next president is. Now we're
Mhm.
starting to talk about privilege. Just because you're rich, just because you went to Harvard, doesn't necessarily give you privilege. And I'll have you know, most people don't realize this. One of the richest person on the planet till date is an African. He's dead now, but when you calculate what his net worth was some 600 years ago, you would have to combine Warren Buffett, Bill Gates.
Oh, you're talking about the king with all the
I
Yeah,
gold.
I'm
did
talking
hear
about
that.
Mansa
Who was
Musa,
it?
if you know what
Mansa
I'm talking about.
Musa. Yes, sir.
Exactly. Now
Well, hold
that
on. How did
was
his
a
wealth?
G.
How did he build his wealth?
Okay, believe it or not, they had the largest deposits of salt and gold. And his famous saying was, with gold you can thrive, but without salt you die. And it is known that when he decided to go on pilgrimage to Mecca, on his way going, he spent so much gold that he bankrupted the entire market. Like
Yeah.
he crashed the gold market that he was so embarrassed on his way back. He bought back 70% of the gold he spent just to stabilize the market. And that one incident is the reason why Europeans started looking for Timbuktu. Because they believed that Timbuktu would lead them to where his kingdom was so they could invade it and get all the gold. And all of a sudden, a rush into Africa from Europe, trying to find the source of all this gold. That's where the whole Timbuktu reference came from. But sadly,
Wow.
all his wealth was lost. Again, tragic African story. One person makes it and they tear each other down. They don't come together and they think because one person already made it, why do they have to do it? And instead of collaborating, they compete. And that is still true today amongst black people, regardless of what continent you're on. If one black person makes it, and let's say he built a car with, electric car, you instead of thinking, oh, I'm going to build my own car, instead of thinking, well, I can make
Jealousy,
tires for that
envy.
car, they're thinking, I'm going to make a car that's better than it. Come on, you can make headlights for the car, you can make wiper blades for the car, you can make rims for the car, and we could all be rich off of the same car. you know, so the whole crabs in a bucket mentality, it's there. It's always been there. And maybe it's not just black people too. It happens in all races too, but I guess maybe because they document and they critically study their history a little bit better and they analyze it, and their civilization has evolved more effectively than the African civilization has, I think, and some other minority civilizations around the world, because there are other civilizations that have just been left behind.
Well, I was having this conversation with my dad the other day, and we were talking about how Black people don't teach like like generational wealth, how
Mm.
other people do, and that's part of the reason why like it's like a competition. Like, I'm sorry, I always say like, but like Jewish people, they teach their kids generational wealth, and that's how they stay wealthy. Or like, I feel like Black people, I know this is off topic, but I feel like Black people don't necessarily have a culture, and then they feel like money and wealth and all these other small things like contribute to our culture, and so then that creates the crabs in a barrel mentality, because the things that we like cling to as culture is materialistic, and
Um,
generational necessarily mean money. It means like teaching your kids like to invest and do all this other stuff, which most Black families don't do.
Yeah, that's true.
you raise a very, 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 very important point, and that's why I think that finances, the management of finances, and a savings culture, understanding the circular flow of income, simple economics, and understanding how demand and supply works and how it influences the circular flow of income and how income is generated, how investment works. All that should be taught in high school before you go to college.
Yeah. Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I really want to get to what she just said. I love what she just said. I have the biggest grin on my face right now, but I want to make sure, is everyone cool? Like, do we need to go into the next topic? Do you want to set a timer? You know what I mean? Because I really do want to go into what she said. I really do.
Well,
But I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out, when we should, how are we going to manage our time? How much time for a
Now I'm
topic or
interested to see
question?
what you got to say.
yeah, hey, Jordan, could you capture the passage that Ms. Rahel referenced and some comments about her thoughts in the Google Docs? And then
I got
Anton is right. We should move on to who's next on the list that has to go, because we know we still have a little bit over an hour, but so that they get some priority. And then everyone else that can stay, we'll have
Yeah,
a lot of time to discuss.
I'll literally set this for 1 minute and 30 seconds just to touch on what she said, and we could go on to the next person.
Okay.
Before we do that, can you give me like the specific page or like a short sentence so that I can type it?
Yeah, it was page 46.
Or you can
Thank
just copy and paste it in the chat or in the Google Doc.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put the screenshot in the group.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you can do that, and I'll type it up for you.
So who wants to go next before Anton or after Anton?
Does someone? I was gonna say or answer to what she said and then go into my section. But if someone has to go or wants to go before, then
One
they can.
second. I just noticed something. When I started the meeting, it said we had a maximum of 40 minutes. So if we get disconnected for some weird reason,
It said it got extended. Someone extended the time.
Okay, someone extended it. Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay,
Zoom
good.
made it free for everyone to have unlimited for a while.
Okay, cool.
So I wanted to make sure. Does anyone else have to go to work or want to say theirs now before I reply to her and then go into my part?
Yeah, I have to go. So
Okay, that's perfect.
Okay, let's see which one. All right. So one that I found interesting was on page 62, and it's in October 1982. President Reagan officially announced his administration's war on drugs. At the time, less than 2% of the American public viewed drugs as the most important issue facing the nation. And the reason I picked this one is because I always thought that he announced the war on drugs because like people were, complaining that, drugs were ruining the community or, like really like hurting the American public. But at that time, people didn't really view it as a problem as much as they tried to make it out to be. And she later on went into how they basically used the media to kind of drive into people's head that, drugs were like a big problem. And, Black people were kind of starting this epidemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of struck me too. The way the history was told to me, read
Can
to me,
you
was
repeat
that,
what you
it was
said?
just say no. I'm sorry, Jordan?
Who just was speaking?
It was
That was
Chris.
Chris.
Chris. Can you just repeat the last little part that you said? I didn't catch it.
Um, the last part of the actual thing, or
No,
my
what you said, like about how you felt about the person.
um, I said that basically I always believed, or I had always learned that during the time that he announced the war on drugs, that it
Hmm.
was a really big problem that people thought was like hurting the community or, like ruining the economy or anything. But at the time, like less than 2% of people actually viewed it as a problem, and they used the media as a way to kind of drill it in people's heads that this was a big problem that was hurting the community, and we had to, have more punitive punishments and things like that.
Oh
Thank you.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
and you're right, Chris. A lot of people thought that that the real reason that behind what they were doing was to really combat the influx of drugs, but come to find out that it really looking at it now, looking back, it really doesn't look that way.
Yeah,
Hmm.
No, not at all.
So
Um,
you're saying that they use
uh,
the media to create mass hysteria?
That's
yeah,
right.
pretty much. So
oh
they
Like,
yeah.
actually hired a guy for he was basically like the director of like media or something. I forgot the actual title, but basically his only job was to do news conferences or press conferences and talk to the media every week and kind of just make up these almost like like outrageous numbers or statements that so people believe that these drugs were a big problem, like bigger than they actually were.
do you think that they're doing that now with this COVID?
Um, I'm not sure. I think because hindsight is 2020. When we look back, it's easy to say like, wow, like they were just saying that just to say it. But right now, since we're like in it and we can't
Hmm.
we can't really look back on it, so we have to just kind of just take what everything is at face value. And I don't know. It's possible that we could look back and say like, it wasn't as big of a problem as it was.
Can I
Mm,
or never mind, you can go. Who's that? Carmen?
it's- that
Yeah.
was me. So I never really learned about the war on drugs during high school. The only experience and exposure I had towards it was in college, in U.S. history and in my intro to criminal justice course. And there's so many policies that were put into place that specifically targeted people of color and poor
Hmm.
people. For example, how they would charge rock cocaine, crack cocaine, the hard, not the powder. They would charge those people with harder sentences for longer times in prison,
Mm-hmm.
whereas powder cocaine not getting the same treatment. They were given lighter sentences. And that was primarily because crack cocaine was used by people of color and poor people, whereas the powder cocaine was used by the upper class, upper middle class, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting fact.
The, to touch on what you guys said about the media, and even what she just said, like you gotta think. I try and look at history from like not a dark point of view, but like what is the motive? What do they gain from doing this? If that makes sense. I like how you said they were like inflating numbers and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of like stuff the CIA does or MK Ultra and stuff like that. Even the origin of TV programming itself, right? It's literally in the name, TV programming. They would run like trials on young adults and kids to see, how could they program them to buy a product? Like literally the
Yeah.
inception of television shows was to give you something, uh, you know, during the or in between the commercial breaks, if that makes sense. But all it
Yeah.
is to market you products and whatnot. That's why your kids, oh, can I get this new Barbie? Can I get this new da 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 that they see on TV? So
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys like I said, like I'm super into like stuff the military does and CIA. So what they do is, and they've done it, they actually, it was so successful in different places around the world, especially in the Middle East, that they brought it here to America and they actually started doing it on or during the war on drugs. That was the first time they used it here. They have these military NGOs and whatnot that are literally contracted to like brainwash people, right? So they'll inflate stuff on the news. They'll have like they'll even go so far as to disguise themselves in the middle of riots, in bars, pubs, and stuff, and literally incite, rage
Hmm.
or pass off information. And so they were doing the same thing in America during the time with the war on drugs because they saw how effective it was in other places in the world. So they would literally, like you said, they would inflate numbers. They were showing stuff. They were making it a much bigger problem than it needs to be. And it's not just, you can argue it happens now with COVID, but it's not just with that. If you look at almost like any news events, around election time, they've been like historically blown out of proportion compared to, I'm sure you guys have seen this stuff with like the sex trafficking that's happened in Georgia and whatnot. Like that stuff does not get covered. If it does, it's rare, but like they'll overinflate and they want you to focus on key things. So I'm glad you brought that up. That definitely was, it's literally something that they teach you in certain parts of the military. Like they want you, um, to inflate certain events to achieve an outcome. So they definitely did that on the war of drugs. That's not like a theory or anything like that. It's
Yeah, it
information,
was. I
known
like that you
information.
said like compared it to like commercials because it's like the same concept as commercials. If you keep seeing the same thing over and over again, it kind of gets instilled into your brain. And you just you're thinking about it more than you would if you just saw it one time.
Exactly,
So
it's
you like
programming. That's why
it's
your
like
teachers
yeah.
teach you like PEMDAS, like all the tricky things so that you remember, your algebra, your multiplication, your never eat soggy waffles. Like it's
Yeah.
literally psychological programming so that you remember, if that makes sense. It's literal programming.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, but there's a reason why they teach kids using nursery rhymes.
Pardon me?
Nursery rhymes that
Hmm.
the kids are taught in pre-K and
Oh
kindergarten
yeah. Ring around the, oh yeah.
before television, it helps to condition your mind. You
Exactly.
know, pink roses. Roses are red, violets are blue. All these things, like you said, is a way to program your mind and to condition your mind as to what is considered normal. So
Yeah.
it's a normal thing to see a black person getting roughed up by the police, but something must be wrong with the police officer that's roughing up a innocent-looking Caucasian kid who's in a good, well-to-do neighborhood. But if you're in some not so affluent neighborhood and it happens, we need to wait and hear the facts of the case before we pass judgment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Just something super quick before we move on. I'm sure you've all heard of like the school to prison pipeline. I forgot exactly how it's phrased. Someone correct me if you know exactly how it's phrased. But
I think that's right.
um I forgot what exact school I was in, but I remember like one day I was watching the layout of these prisons and whatnot and how they book the prisoner, how they go through for lunch and all these different things. I'm like, wow, like I saw it in like a disadvantaged community in a school in particular. I'm like, this is exactly how it is in jail. Like this is literally exactly what it is. I got the privilege to go to some better schools and I'm like, this is completely different from a predominantly black or black and Hispanic or Latinx school. You know what I mean? Like it just was shocking to me. So just to go or piggyback off of what you said, with the nursery rhymes, like it literally is, programming from an early age to start to accept these norms, rather than, think outside the box or, question some of these things as you get older. If you're taught, you know, it from a young age, you're probably not going to question it or give it a second thought as you age.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. Agreed. So I like Jordan's line, using mass media to create hysteria. I'm taking that with me.
Well, they do that a lot. I can't even lie. So are we ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah, who's going next?
Great subject. Great. So far, really great passages. I love what I'm hearing. Did anyone want to go next? If not, I can go.
Go ahead.
It's not maybe so. All right. Um, dang. I'm trying to think which one I want to use. Okay. So the second one I had was on page 21 of 379. Uh, it says, I argue that the shame and stigma of the prison label are in many respects more damaging to the African American community than the shame and stigma associated with the Jim Crow. And it goes on to say like how we demonize like our men in our community and whatnot. I found it interesting because it brought back like a memory I wasn't too fond of. I remember reading it and having like a moment of ignorance or just being biased. And I yelled in my head like, no, like that's, that's the real world, or that's, people of different races outside of our communities. And I had to stop myself and be like, no, like I've did everyone else hear that? Am I crazy? Did you guys hear
You're
that?
not crazy. It's a jingle when when someone joins.
Oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. Just making sure. Thought I left or something. Um, I just had to check myself and like reassess like that opinion. I'm like, I've seen a lot more judgment from, whether it be my family or whatnot. And the specific memory that it brought up was when I was in elementary, I went to like a predominantly white school. And I remember everyone was looking up their fathers, and most of my friends had like fathers that owned businesses in the community and whatnot. And I didn't know what my dad did, to be honest. Uh, so me and my dad share a name. I remember putting in my name. We have a different last name, hoping that it would say no results, and then I could just make something up. And I remember typing it in, and on the first link, his name shows up, and my friend like instinctively clicks it like as soon as he sees, oh, there it is, and then it shows his mugshot in class and we're all at the computers, and I remember like thinking like, damn, like like being like 10 years old, like holy, like and it made me think like how I judged or assessed my dad so much differently after seeing that. I think it was for, I don't even remember what it's for, some drug possession or something. But I just thought like how he went from like my hero in that moment, or at least someone I looked up to like, dang, like you like you've been in jail. And obviously I don't know the context of everything, so I'm just like, I'm a little kid. And then you know how kids are in elementary. Oh, your dad's in jail. So that passage to me was so interesting because it really, I had a nostalgic moment or a bad memory. Like, dang, like you know it's true. We do demonize people. Once they come out of incarceration, they try and get reacclimated to being a civilian and whatnot. We do that. Whether it's our family members or people we went to school with, we do demonize them and judge them severely. Like for the most part, that's what I've seen.
I feel like that goes both ways because I feel like in some aspects people look at you as a criminal, but sometimes in the Black community, once you've gone to jail, it gives you status.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Well, my thoughts on that. Um, I have only been arrested once, and I got released before they even were even done booking me. I shouldn't have been arrested. My first interaction with the law happened when I was 21. I'm 40 now. And believe it or not, that was when I started this program at Georgia State. And I had just gone to work at a restaurant, and I left and I put a do rag on, and I was blasting loud music in my my 1988 Mazda 929. And this police officer was at the light in front of me, going in the opposite direction. He turns around and comes behind me to pull me over. And I thought he was trying to pull someone else over. So I wasn't paying attention. So when I realized it was me, I pull over. And he claims that he was arresting me because I didn't have a driver's license. I had an international driver's license, and I showed it to him. And I didn't have a tag because I just got the car a week ago. So it had the dealer's tag. And I told him everything can be verified. He has the insurance. My uncle has the insurance. And he just shoved me in the back of his car. But guess what? He was black. And then a white cop pulls over, asking me if he needed any assistance. He was like, no, I got this. And then he's like, what's the problem? And he shows it to him. And they are arguing. And he's saying, bro, this is a legal document. It's an international driver's license. He's a foreign student. And you can verify all this. Why you got to arrest him? And the next thing I see, white cop throws his hands up like, okay, I'm backing away. And he left. And I tried to explain to the cop in 90-something degree weather, he just shoved me in the back of the car. And this was my second month in the United States. And I have never been arrested before in my life. And I was able to dial my sister. I had the old Nokia phones where you can hold the button down and it will dial. So my sister could hear the entire conversation. So she was waiting for me at the DeKalb jail on Memorial Drive before I even got booked. So I got out, went to court, explained to the judge what happened. And lo and behold, the white cop was in the courthouse. And when I gave my testimony, I said, well, I have a witness and he's sitting right there. And the police officer gave his account. The judge was furious. She was mad. She apologized. And when she was done with me, she told me to go. And then she called the police officer into her chambers. But that just goes, to show, what is being talked about is not just white people and black people. It's the system. This system of racism that treats a certain people a different way, regardless of their circumstances, upbringing, financial stability or not, or whatever it is. Just because they look a certain way, they will be treated differently from whomever it is that's considered normal, or I don't know.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. Like a lot of things are stereotyped and like stigmatized. And like I said, now being older, I have context on the situation and whatnot, and I don't judge people like that anymore. But it's true, like the system and even like society. I remember growing out my hair in high school, and one of my teachers that I love to this day, blue-eyed, blonde hair lady, Miss Sellers, like super close with her. I remember I grew out my hair and I was growing out my dreads, and she sat me down one day and she was like, you're gonna cut your hair before you go to school, right? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, I just don't want them to perceive you like a thug or a gangster. And I looked at her, I was like, and this lady, like, she's bought me food, like she's went out of her way to, do stuff for me. She's just like, you kind of look like a thug. And I like looked at her, I'm like, wow, like that's, mind you, I'm in robotics. I do a lot of stuff at school. I stay out of trouble, like, you know. And I was like, wow, like society and just the system in general, like we are preconditioned to perceive things that are not at all, you know, thug or gangster. You know what I mean? Like that to me was just so crazy to say, because you got to think the original gangsters and whatnot, they wore slick back, greasy hair. They didn't have dreads and braids. So, but yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like it's kind of crazy how it's set up.
Hey, Anton, could you do me a favor? If you could post exactly what page and what paragraph, or copy and paste the exact passage so I can document that.
Do you want it to go in the group me, or do you want it to go in the Zoom?
What do you think, Jordan? She's taking the notes.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. The
because I'm putting
docs?
what everybody pages and stuff.
Yeah, I can put it in the docs for you. You want me to do that?
Yeah,
All right.
just in the
Perfect.
same that I've been doing it.
And I think everybody should kind of do that, so that way it's easier to keep up with the conversation and with someone else doing the documentation. So who wants to go next? Carmen, you've been quiet.
I can go next. Well, a lot of my thoughts are you guys are already saying them. So what am I gonna say? Yeah, I agree. Mute myself.
No, I understand that.
Like I've thought myself, so it's been kind of hard to keep up. All right, so my sentence is on page 2. 1 second, I have it copied and pasted here too. And the reason I thought it was an interesting statement, but I also remember reading it and thinking, all right, I'm gonna come back to this and see if I agree with it. Because at the time, I was so shocked by the sentence. And the sentence is on page 2, and it says, "We have not ended racial caste in America. We have merely redesigned it." And when I heard that, I was like, racial caste? I was like, that's what they have in India. They have a caste system in India. I remember learning about that in world history and thinking, how is that possible that we have it here? And I was thinking, like, once slavery ended, like, obviously things are not perfect in any way, and so much needs to change and so much needs to be reformed. And that's why I'm here in the criminal justice system to begin with. Like, I want to push for those changes. And so I was like, it's this sentence basically, in my opinion, acts as the thesis for the entire book so far from what I've read. And going back to it now after reading, not even, I think I'm on page 50, like, I completely agree with the sentence. I completely see how everything has been redesigned from the top down to keep white privilege going and to keep it living in this country. So I definitely thought it was a very powerful sentence.
Super, that just punched me in the face just hearing it. That's very true.
Do you feel like, I just be trying to get conversations going, but do you feel like white privilege still exists in America, and do you feel like white people are aware of it?
White privilege definitely exists, and a lot of the white people that I hang out with are completely aware of it. They completely understand how their privilege has affected them, and they use their privilege for good. And white privilege has a negative connotation to it when we use it now, but it's not like it's not a bad thing. 2 + 2 = 4. White privilege exists. Like, it's not something to be debated about. It's just what you do with it. If you have white privilege and you're not using it for good, then yeah, white privilege is bad in your situation. But if you have white privilege and you're sitting here talking about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and pushing these narratives that need to come out, then you're using your white privilege for good. Like, that becomes a good thing. It's what you do with it.
I know some people of color, we'll just say black people, that would say that there's no way that you could use white privilege for good, because they would say that the best thing for white people to do is just to mind their business and to not speak on something that they don't know. I'm not saying that's how I feel. I'm just saying that I know some people who feel that way.
Well, personally,
I disagree with that sentiment.
I disagree with
I
that.
disagree too.
Yeah, because I think. Go ahead.
But I don't either. I think that if you are not educating yourself and are not pushing correct facts out there, and you're putting yourself into the place where you feel like you're being hurt and you're coming from a place of victimization instead of advocation, I think that's where I could see black people feeling that way. But as long as white people are doing their part in educating themselves, then it should be a positive thing.
Yeah, that's what like, I'm all for. I am that person that's like, I believe, we have to do it for ourselves. We can't expect a handout or a savior. Like, we have to, go out and do it for ourselves. But at the same time, I'm going to use like an extreme analogy, right? If someone is getting murdered or raped and you're just like, well, going to keep scrolling on my Twitter feed, like, bro, like, like, hello, like, can you, come help? You know what I mean? Like, now when I see like posts on Instagram or riding around, like, and there's a white man or woman and they're just going to a protest to take a selfie, and it's like, yeah, like mind your business, bro. Like go over there somewhere.
But
Like
I
I
was
definitely get that.
for
I definitely get
like
that. Like
saying Black Lives Matter to get to
a
gain.
trend. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's corny. No, I don't believe that at all. But again, like educating yourself and staying out of the way in a positive way. Like, and when I say that, I don't mean that in a rude way. I mean like don't act as a force against me. Like if I'm trying to lose weight, don't bring 3 pizzas in the house. You get what I'm saying? Like you don't have to bring home celery and buy me fruit smoothies. Just don't get in the way, is what I'm saying. But the idea of it's like, oh no, stay over there. Like I just think like there's nothing. In a way, it encourages us to be like, black versus white, like and fuel like racial tensions. Now, like I said, I do believe like we have to get it done ourselves, build economic equality and whatnot. But I'm not gonna say like I'm not gonna turn down a helping hand that genuinely seeks help and could positively or help us skyrocket in terms of what plans we're trying to dive into as a community.
To buttress Anton's point, yes, I agree with everything you said. What fuels this racism is actually fear, fear of the unknown, fear of what you do not understand. And a lot of times, like I said, I've seen what tribalism looks like. And my wife is from a different country. Her first language is French. My first language is English because we were a former British colony. The country she's from was a colony of 3 different countries. One time it was Britain, one time it was France, one time it was Germany. So she speaks all 3 languages, and her native tongue as well. And when we started dating and introductions were in order, and we've been married for 16 years now, I remember the pause after I told my mom that she wasn't Nigerian. There was a long pause, like almost 40 seconds before she said another word. But now we're all black, we're all African, and understand that Cameroon shares a border with Nigeria. So the fear of what they don't understand or what the other person does not know is one of the reasons why we have these this racism, and even amongst Nigerians. If you're from a certain part of Nigeria, they're like, oh, the Igbos, they don't amount to nothing. They always end up being hoodlums. Who told you that? I'm telling you. So it's the same way some Caucasians look at black people, and maybe because of the way they dress or just because they're black, they're like, yeah, black people, that's normal. They always do crack. Who told you that? Or they'll be shocked that, okay, well, I'm expecting an engineer, and they're expecting, and then a black person shows up and like, yes,
Here
can
to
I
clean the
help you?
bathroom?
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm the engineer. And they're like, are you almost looking at you like, are you sure you're really the engineer?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what were you expecting? A white dude? Yeah, that is the systematic racism we're talking about. It doesn't have to be something you're doing directly. It could be a system that makes it okay for you to stereotype people, a system that it makes it okay for you to just prejudge people and treat them differently by default because they look a certain way. Heck, the guy could be Asian and he could be a rocket scientist. He could be an Aboriginal Australian and be the most brilliant biologist. you know.
I mean,
And I will point this out too. One of the reasons why I decided to go to Georgia State was the day I had a choice between Georgia Tech and Georgia State, and I remember being interviewed at the International Students Office by this counselor, a white lady, probably in her late 50s at the time. And when I gave her my name, she decided to speak to me in my native language, like she learned that language from birth, and she spoke it better than me. I was just looking at her like deer in the headlights. I'm like, how the heck? Where the heck? And what, am I dreaming? She was speaking my native language to me like a poet would speak the language. using vocabulary that I've never heard before. And I had to ask, I'm like, were you born in Nigeria and raised there and then you just happen to be white? She was like, no, I did my master's and PhD at and she mentioned the university in Lagos. And she said, oh, I lived in Nigeria for almost 15 years. I was like, wait, what? So just saying, that was me stereotyping her. And I'm black. So believe it or not, I'm guilty too. I'm guilty.
You want me to just go? No? Okay.
Did Carmen, were you about to add something else to that?
Oh, there was something I was gonna say. Oh, just about white privilege and how I think the conclusion of our conversation is that the best way to use your white privilege is to echo and promote people of color's voices and African Americans' voices and Black people's voices instead of creating the narrative yourself.
Boom, that's powerful.
I just wanted to say something real quick.
Yeah.
I know when you're saying about should white people not help or whatever. I think that for me, I don't have an issue with people as long as they're sincere. Like, I don't care where you're from, as long as you're sincere. But I think the thing that has me looking kind of sideways now and questioning things is all these companies that are coming out now in the wake of George Floyd and how all of a sudden Black Lives Matter. But 2 years ago, you wouldn't have said that my life mattered, you know, because it wasn't the cool thing to do or it wasn't the it thing to do. You were worried about whatever, and now it's a trend. So now it's hard for me to look at companies because it's like, okay, but this is the first time you said something in 70 years about how Black Lives Matter. Then you have other companies that are like, okay, they've been down and been saying stuff. So it's like hard to really gauge the company's sincerity more than anything, because are you doing this because you want our money, or you want us to continue to support you and not boycott you because you think that we won't support you if we don't know where you stand? So I think that is a bigger issue for me than just like white people saying, oh, I'm going to protest. Now, if you're going, like you said, going to take a picture and a selfie and being out, yeah, no. But that's the thing. And then the funny thing is how he was saying about how his family was like his mom was silent. So my husband's American, I'm Ethiopian. And whenever I introduce my husband, they're like, oh, really? Like, it doesn't matter. American people, Black people, like Ethiopians, they're all like, that's different. Like, it does not matter who. So I thought that was funny. But my husband, I always tell him how in Ethiopia, there's different tribal wars and stuff, but we got chaos going on now. And he's always like, well, he finds it interesting that we're going through the same thing over there, and it's a totally different country, and how racism is a thing that happens worldwide and not just in the U.S.
Yeah, and Rachel, yeah, I feel, yeah, Rahel. So I'm sorry, Rahel. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even realize that you were from Ethiopia, and in a way, I'm happy that what happened did happen, because, like I said, that was 16 years ago. My mom is a completely different person, and she didn't do it because she was necessarily racist. She was just afraid of what she didn't understand, and she just felt it would be easier to just be normal, so that it would be easier for them to fit in and be, it would be easier for her friends, because now, like, okay, so now we have to go to Cameroon. Now we have to adapt to their culture, to their way of doing things. And what if they dominate us, and all these other thoughts? And when I talk to my friends that are Caucasian and well-meaning and sincere, they share the same views until I educate them. There are a lot of ignorant people, and I don't mean it in an offensive way. They're ignorant because they don't know any better. And I think that when you're woke, it's incumbent upon you to educate the people in your circle, if you're going to stay in that circle, so that they don't go continue perpetrating the things that affect you and the people in your circle negatively. I have a Caucasian friend once asked me, she's like, with everything going on, with all the riots, I'm afraid for my friends that are like you, because I know I have an uncle or an aunt somewhere that comes around every Labor Day weekend and they start sprouting all these nonsense when they drunk and everything. And I'm afraid that people will think that I'm like him or I'm like her, and I'm not. You know I'm not. And they're scared. They want to be separated from their parents or uncles and aunts or cousins that are inherently or consciously biased or racist or whatever. And I told her, I said, look, don't be afraid for me. Continue to educate yourself and educate the people around you. And maybe you need to call them out and let them know, hey, if you don't get right, we're not going to invite you to the barbecue no more. Or we're not going to be serving beer when you come around no more. I mean, you got to be serious about it, or else it's not going to change. The government is not going to make people not have racial bias. They will hide it. I mean, heck, there are people in government that have racial bias. There are people in government that are black that have racial bias.
Mm.
So it's no longer just a bias is no longer a color thing. If more Americans went out of America and visited other countries in other parts of the world, they will share this view and they will gain a broader perspective on how to deal with it. Because there's nothing that we're doing here that's not been done before. There's no problem we're facing that hasn't existed somewhere before. We all just deal with it differently and talk about it differently, and we'll be able to import and export good ideas. And that's where we can leverage globalization, for instance, to address these problems. And I think that's one of the biggest issues. You want to talk about Black Lives Matter? Okay, well, start educating your kids to become judges, to become legislators, to become police officers. Renew their passport. Let them go visit, Algiers. Let them understand that Egypt is actually an African country. Let them understand that the ancient Egyptians are actually black, and the reason why Egyptians have white pigmentation is because they have been mixing with the Greek and other Europeans that have
conquered the land.
Exactly, that conquered the
They
land.
knocked the nose off the Sphinx.
Exactly.
Oh, we could get into that all day.
They need to study history. You need to study history if you want to influence the future. You can't just jump on the bandwagon and Black Lives Matter without understanding the history and understand that there used to be a Black Wall Street and it was bombed by the U.S. government.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's not. I don't understand why that wasn't documented, why that isn't taught in history. And I just took it upon myself to educate myself more about American history, world history, and African history. And I found out that I knew even less about Africa than I thought I did.
Yeah. Two quick things real quick. So I know we got to keep moving. Just to touch on what you said, I think you mentioned earlier. What happened? I think it's unmuted.
I'm sorry.
Fine. I just want to touch on what you said, like educating the people in your circle if you're willing to stay in that circle, because even with the word ignorant, I heard that my whole life. Like, I don't know if anyone shares this, but like, especially older people in my family, like they love saying, "Oh, you're just ignorant. And they really don't know, what it means. But there are some people that are, there are some people that are willfully ignorant. And so we have to, separate the two, like definitely educate the people that are open to the knowledge and open to receiving it. Even if they're like, I don't really subscribe to that, at least listen. There's some people that don't even, and they won't listen, and they'll like hate you because you have more knowledge, or you know something about something they may not be interested in. Like some people are like that. So I like how you included, if you're staying in that circle, because it is important to distance yourself from the toxicity as well. But to go back to the original point that Carmen said about, I forgot exactly how it went, but that it is, the racism has changed, or it has evolved. You got to even think back to, like, I'm sure you guys have all heard of Willie Lynch by now, how he like would train the slave masters on how to make his slaves more productive, how to make them, have more kids, work harder, less, rebellion. He would do crazy stuff like strap a horse to his leg and his arm and have them pull apart one male slave, the biggest, the strongest one in front of them, and none of them will rebel, and all these different crazy things. That's where you even get the term lynching from, right?
Lynching. Yeah,
He
that's
said,
right.
turn the light skins against the dark skins, the men against the women, the young against the old, right? And it worked. It's literally psychological warfare, right? And then it trickles down even today. Like she said, it has evolved. So now we have, I remember watching a movie that was based off of some real life event, and it was a white man at a dinner table with a lot of other uh I don't want to say billionaires, they were probably millionaires at the time, but he said, I'm going to be bringing this black man, I forgot his name, we're going to say Reggie for now because why not? He's going to be, working with this business. I'm going to give him this position. Everyone at the table looked at him like, bro, like, no, we don't accept that. We don't want any black people here. And he said, no, listen, if I give him this place of power and make him feel like he's a part of us, we know he's not a part of us. But if we make him feel exalted above the rest, we can make them feel insecure. We can make them feel, fearful, envious. And so just to piggyback again off of what she said, it has evolved, into something else. That we have that. I'm sure everyone has seen that stupid hashtag on their Instagram or Twitter, Team Light Skin versus Team Dark Skin. I never understood that ever. But yeah, I wanted to piggyback off of that because that's such like I said, a powerful statement to say. Like it literally has just changed into new forms, whether it's redlining, black people can't get loans. It literally has evolved.
Mm. I
Okay,
just,
so
I,
go ahead.
my bad. I was just saying, I grew up like in a predominantly white area, like when I was the only black kid in my class and stuff like that. And you could just like, I'm looking back now how they segregated the black people who were lighter and darker. Like cause I was lighter, considered lighter. It was like a lot of people would try to talk to me, and the darker skinned people, they just like, nobody really tried to talk to them,
Very
you know?
true.
Everybody isolated them. Or like my best friend, she's Nigerian. And when we were in school, everybody would pick on her and call her mean names and stuff like that. And it's just crazy looking back now. Because we were kids and it's
Yeah.
instilled in you as
At
a
a young
kid.
age. Yeah. That's really sad. That was true for me as well. I don't know if you guys experienced this, but like I even at one point was one of those kids that was like, oh, well, I'm Native American. Like, you know
Yeah,
what I
and
mean? Like that
everybody
is
wants to be foreign. Nobody wants to be black anymore. Everybody.
exactly. And now a part of that sentiment is true. All stereotypes come from an origin. Like we were before Dusty Columbus came over here, we were interbreeding, with natives over here in America. There's pyramids, structures all over the world before Columbus or anyone else spread out, across the world. So there is some truth to that, but again, it does go back to that toxicity of, oh, I'm lighter skin or I'm mixed or my granddad was white, because you feel inferior for
As a
being
black person.
black. Yeah.
And it happens not just between blacks and white, and like I pointed out before, it happens amongst people from the same country. Like for instance, me growing up, I used to think that there were only three ethnic groups in Nigeria, and it wasn't until I reached like 17 that I woke to the fact that there's well over 40 different tribal groups. It's just that the three are the dominant groups that suppress the other groups, and they had no representation. I just happened to belong to one of the three groups, and I was so ignorant of it until I was dating someone from the other 30 something groups that I didn't even know exist. And I ignorantly assumed that she belonged to one of those other two groups that I didn't belong to, and she had to educate me. I was like, "You're Igbo, right?" She's like, "No, I'm not Igbo," and I find that offensive that you think I'm Igbo. I was like, "Oh shit," and she was like, "No, I'm Ishakiri. Our language is different. We all come from the southeast, but we're dominated by the Igbos. We don't have representation, but it's 2000 and it's 1998, and I'd expect you to know better." She took me to school, and she was an English major too. She took me to school, and I was like, wow, I had no idea. And If you're from the southeastern part of Nigeria, the assumption is you probably going to be a businessman, or if you can't make it as a businessman, you're going to be a fraud. And if you're from the north, you're a northerner. So if you don't join the military, you're probably going to end up a politician, or you're going to end up being someone who embezzles money or something. And we have all these stereotypes, and this is just amongst Nigerians. So you can imagine what's going on. In the United States is a big place to be a country. Understand, the United States is the size of a freaking continent. And that's part of the problem, really. I think that's part of the problem. The country is so big. A lot of Americans don't realize that the world is bigger, and there are things going on outside the United States that are similar to the things going on in the United States. So they don't realize that the problem is not as unique to them as they think. But it's really interesting. When I took this class, I did not expect that this is what we would be doing, but it's actually turning out to be positive.
Oh, for sure. I don't mind it at all. We're at what, 3:25. Who's next? I think how many people have we gone through so far?
I think we've
Like
gone through
3.
3.
I haven't
Really?
gone
Me,
through
Carmen, Jordan, Chris. Someone else had to go to work. I
I
forgot
haven't
Oh,
her
gone
name.
yet.
yeah,
I
You
haven't
Rahel.
didn't?
gone yet.
Oh, okay, I think maybe you're just asking a question for a conversation. That's my bad.
All right,
Okay.
I think we gotta have a speed round. Do I need a time? If okay, so here's what I'm thinking. We could rather spend the same. Am I muted?
No, you're not muted.
Okay. We could rather spend the same amount of time that we have been on everybody that we can fit in for like the next 30 minutes, or we can do a speed round, or we can just have whoever doesn't speak can just post their paragraph in the notes. I mean, as long as you've been participating in other people's sentences, like, I think it's okay. I think that we can still count them as like active and stuff like that. Because he didn't really define guidelines as far as what's considered participating and what's not.
Yeah, it's super ambiguous. I think, what if we did the speed round, and if you have something that you want to mention or like piggyback off of, you write it down. And so like whatever time left we have at the end, we could just say it. Just to like
All right.
just to, keep us on track for the last 30 minutes.
All right. So let's see. How many people have to go?
Let's go need to go.
I think it's like 3 or 4.
Or all right.
Me, Alexis, Jordan, and Michael have not shared our thoughts yet. Well, I mean,
All right.
passages yet.
So you guys have 5 minutes for each. I'm gonna do that.
Okay. Who wants to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I think you're a talker like me, so I think you should go last, and then the other two or the other three could go first.
Well, and Jordan, by the way, I posted my thoughts and comments in the chat for what they call it, the Zoom chat, so you can just you can use that.
Okay. And you want me to? Okay.
I'll go next. So my passage was on. Is that cool with everyone?
Yeah.
So my passage, it was from page, I think it was 28. Hold on, let me double check. I'm pretty sure it was 28. Yeah, so it's on page 28, and it was basically the passage where he was saying that the dismissal of one social caste or caste system doesn't necessarily mean or correlate to linear progress in African Americans. And that kind of stuck with me because I was like, it's so true. Because when one thing happens, people take one anecdotal experience and shift that to, okay, then the entire race has made it, and racism is gone. It's okay. Like, okay, we had a black president, so like, you guys aren't oppressed anymore, right? You're happy with that, right? You're good. It's okay that you guys are giving lifelong prison sentences for the same things that white men are giving a slap on the wrist for. You good, right? Though it's okay, right? And it's just like, no, not really. I would it's cool and all, like that's amazing that we've gotten the progress that we've gotten, but it does not mean anything in terms of the bigger picture. We're still oppressed. And I feel like a lot of people, especially people who only do this for like, I guess you could say the look of it, like how you guys were saying how some people take the whole Black Lives Matter thing as just like a trend, and they're like, okay, well, but one person made it, so everyone made it. And that's not necessarily true, not even close. And so when slavery went away, obviously then came segregation, and then segregation is gone in some way, and then in comes there's like we're still sitting here, and there's microaggressions, and there's still in some way segregation, and then there's what I'm focused on, which is environmental injustice. That's my major is environmental science, and so I didn't really know until I started looking more into my major that my major is racism bleeds into everything, and so like I didn't even realize that there was a such thing as environmental racism until I started looking up on redlining and things like that, and how some Black people couldn't move into certain neighborhoods, and over time, when we could move out of the neighborhoods that we were redlined into, we were just so it was in our mind so much so like this is our neighborhood, this is where we stay. It's been like that for generations and generations and generations to come, and what turns into what they call the hoods. And so when we could get out of those positions, it was just like we don't know anything more than what we've been raised on. And so that just kind of stuck with me because it seems like no matter what, the dismissal of one caste system doesn't necessarily mean that there's a great progress, because a new one just takes its place in turn. It's not like one caste system goes away and then it all just disappears overnight and everybody's happy and there's justice and there's liberty and there's freedom for everyone. It's not even close to that.
Yep. And you said that was from page 26, right?
28.
Oh, 28?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On the rebirth of a caste?
Under, hold on, let me see. Yeah, under rebirth of a caste. It was page 28 is like 3 pages after that.
Okay. Well, do you know what paragraph?
Let me find it really quick. It was the second paragraph. Well, I guess technically this is the first paragraph, the first fresh paragraph of this page, where it says, I don't really know how to pronounce this man's name, and I don't want to butcher it. But there was a quote from him, and it was like, is less total, less capable of encompassing and controlling the entire race. However, any notion that this evolution reflects some kind of linear progress will be misguided.
Wow.
And he was talking about in terms of one caste system, one racial caste being dismissed and a new one being set in place.
Powerful.
And it's just like, I found that so impactful because growing up, I'm not from out here. I just moved to Georgia about a year ago. I'm from California. And so when I grew up, like the neighborhood that I was raised in, like when I got to about middle school, we moved from Oakland, where I was born and raised, and we moved to a neighborhood, we moved to a city called Brentwood, which not a lot of people even know where that is, but it's like a really majority white city area community. And I was in a space where I also was like the only Black kid in every class, and like there was like the microaggressions and the ignorant questions and the just kind of like weird, it was just kind of surreal of like the things that people don't understand, or like the ignorant questions that the other students who weren't Black would ask me. And it would just be like, you wouldn't ask me that if I weren't the only Black person in the class, or the way that the teachers referred to me, or the way the teachers talked to me. And it was just like, I don't know, kind of an eye opener when I got to be older, as like, I feel like that also has a lot to do with, that's a caste system. Those microaggressions are a part of the caste system. Like there's still a racial caste system in play, like where there's certain things that people wouldn't ask you, or people wouldn't want to talk about, or people wouldn't put these stereotypes upon you if it weren't for the fact that I'm a Black woman in this class or at this school.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing, but we have to move on. Sorry to be that person.
No, you're good. I was done.
Time managed now. This is really cool. I'm glad I get to have these conversations with y'all, because my dad's Dominican and my mom's white. So I haven't really had the full oppression of being Hispanic, right? but I have felt that, and I felt that for my siblings, my step siblings, who are straight up Mexican, like dark skinned Mexican, and they get so much more hate than I ever would. Even though we come from similar places. And so it's been really eye-opening, and I just really appreciate hearing y'all's stories and like how everything's been affected.
Yeah, same. I mean, I'm really quiet, but I like interact in my head, and I try to say it out loud, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm just hush. I'm just be quiet. But
Girl, don't hush. Speak your
I'm
mind.
loving
This is a
this. I'm loving
conversation.
this.
The only oppression that I ever really feel is because I am a lesbian, and so like that's the only hardship really I've had to face as far as having to deal with that, and my identity with my Hispanic family and all of that has been difficult. But as far as the color of my skin, no, I haven't really had to feel that.
I feel like
And
I've had both because I am gay and then I'm black, and it's like a woman, and it's just like stacking the bricks against myself, you know.
you know, the thing is, a lot of people don't get what attracts foreigners to America. It's not the geographical location, it's the idea of freedom, the idea of liberty, the idea of justice for all and equality for all, the idea that you can be free from oppression. That's the reason why the Europeans left Europe. They wanted to be free from the Pope. They wanted to be free from everyone that was controlled by the Pope, i.e., the monarchs and whatnot. That was why they came here. But then they got here and they started doing the things that they became the oppressors. They went from being oppressed to becoming the oppressors. A lot of people
Genocide
don't
Native Americans.
exactly, and that would have been my next point. But it's so rich. But I know that two other people still have to. Jordan has to speak, and I think Michael too has to speak, and I'll just go last.
Michael went already. It's just me and you left.
Oh, okay.
But I can go ahead and do my little piece. The part that I found, the page that my little passage is on is on 51, and it's the beginning of the section on the birth of mass incarceration. And I couldn't like pick one sentence because they all kind of like complement each other. But it's basically talking about how the government officials in the South felt that the civil rights movement was like a criminal act towards the government that they had set up. And so they treated them as criminals instead of people who were just trying to get equality. And I guess the one sentence that really brought it together for me is saying, let me see if I can see it. It says Southern governors and law enforcement officials often characterize these tactics as criminal and argue that the rise of the civil rights movement was indicative of a breakdown of law and order. And the reason why I picked it is because I feel like it's very relevant to today and how they feel like the Black Lives Matter movement is an attack when it's really just Black people wanting equality. And it's not like people think of it as like Black people want to be more important. I can't think of the word or like explain it well, but it's like they think Black people want to be above them or have all these, like just be above them, I guess. I don't know how to say it, but we just want to be equal. We want to be treated the same, have the same opportunities. And that's why I picked that one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think are we, I'm just writing down stuff I want to say. So are we going into the last one and then saying what we wanted to say after, or what are we doing?
I mean, we have enough time.
That's all I have.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that's all I have for mine.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as we start, how do you pronounce your name?
Me?
Yes.
Which one? Me or
you.
Jordan?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Olajide.
No,
Olajide Anamishan.
Olajide.
Yeah, the JI sounds like a GEE.
Okay. Alajide.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
As long as we start Alajide's passage at 3:50, we should be fine. So if you want to go ahead and say something about Jordan's, I get that.
So
All right.
Jordan, if you wanted to put your thoughts into one sentence, shoot.
My thoughts on the passage.
Yes.
Give me a second. Just see, I'll
Mhm.
discuss. I need to process.
Process.
I just don't know because it's a lot.
I know.
Yeah, that's hard to condense. I can say something while she's doing that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just like what you said about the government seeing as it was like an act of like it was criminal what they were doing. To me, like even to this day, it's so crazy to me that wanting you know a good bathroom, water, equal water fountain, like that is that is insane to me. That like that's even that even existed. You know what I mean? Like I have a great grandma that is, I think she's like 86. Like I honestly like I understand why some of these older people are still sour. Like I do. Like I would be so, and I don't condone. I mean, they can't do much. Like they can't even walk 10 feet, to be honest. But I don't condone like like oh we should genocide white people and all that crazy stuff. But I understand why they're like sour. Like I would be super sour if like a cop beat up my son or killed my son or even crazy stuff. I'm sure everyone's heard of Emmett Till and a bunch of other people that were slaughtered. Um, and the cops just looked in the other direction because like they didn't have cell phones and a lot of people were nonviolent, so it was like there was no retaliation out of fear. Um, so I just wanted to like piggyback off of like what you said. Like that is so crazy to me that getting equal water fountains was an issue back then. Like especially like I said, I'm super into like past stuff that the US has done, whether in our country or not. Like there's stuff that says like they would put certain chemicals and whatnot and different, not even just black people, like poor white people, Hispanics, different minorities. Like there's certain stuff that would go in the water to limit population control. Like you could find some stuff like that on the dark web. Like it's really crazy to me that that was even a thing. But that's all I wanted to piggyback on for that point.
Let me just look at Flint, Michigan. If Flint,
Oh my
Michigan's water was if Flint, Michigan's water was
man.
water supply, Buford, Georgia. That's where I'm from. I'm from Sugar Hill, Georgia. I was near high school. But imagine if you put that stuff in Buford's or North Gwinnett or like a primarily white neighborhood and area.
It would be
It would have been fixed
spotless.
The
so
water
many
would
years
have been
ago.
fixed within like 10 minutes.
Man, how is Tesla, how are they sending a car outer space, right, to the moon? And then why is the rocket landing itself? But we can't clean water. I don't understand. The rocket is literally landing itself on one tank of gas. Why can we not clean water? I don't understand. Like I know it's more complex than that, but like
It,
really? Are you
it's
serious?
really not that complex though, because if you can spend all that money on gas tanks, you can spend $15 to buy the store out Kroger of Brita filters and give one to every family and make sure everybody has one. Just how they could spend all that money on all those respirators that we don't need that are sitting in a warehouse because they determined that respirators are killing everybody. They could have bought Brita filters for everybody in Flint, Michigan, or new pipes.
I was like, I don't even think filters could even help. But I know, like, it's crazy to me that, like, what is the government doing? Because
Yeah,
all
I
this
need
money we
to
spend on
know.
stuff, and I'm like, y'all aren't doing this. But then you hear people like Jaden Smith sending water to them, like, on a monthly basis so that they could have clean water, but the government can't do nothing.
Yeah, and that's just one person.
Rahel,
That's not
so
even touching that type of money.
this is my view, okay? And I might get shot for it, but check it out. You see, when we start saying, well, what is the government doing? This is what I'm thinking. Who's the government that will put them there? If you know who you elected and they made certain promises and you gave them a mandate before you elected them, it shouldn't be hard to reach out to them and say, hey, fix this shit. But if you didn't elect them, or if you weren't aware of how the whole election thing works, let alone know how the people got elected, and you actually need to get something done, it is no wonder why they're tone deaf and they can't hear you, or they choose not to hear you. And also another thing, a wise person once told me, when you teach an entire generation of people how to memorize and how to become a bunch of people that just say yes sir, and they're taught to be employees and not leaders. This is why we have this problem. If we taught our kids to be thinkers and to be leaders, they'll be thinking about, okay, well, how do I, revolutionize the purification of water? How can we make it cheaper to make houses while not sacrificing security and being able to cool and heat the house and still make it look good and everything? How do I make it different versus who's hiring?
I get what you're saying. I get that, but at the same time, if this was, like it was said earlier, if it was a white neighborhood and not Flint, Michigan, they would have, the federal government, the state government, they would have all stepped in and tried to fix this problem. And it's kind of like, oh, well, whatever.
But guess what?
I get what you're saying.
I get what you're saying, but if it did happen in a white neighborhood, their congressmen, their reps, and whoever it is in charge locally, they will not be able to stay in their homes because they will picket their homes, they will picket their offices.
That's true.
They will not get reelected because they are involved. But also, there's also that white privilege, and I get your point.
But I think with that too comes with, like, we have to look at the deeper issue, which is one, Black people don't trust their politicians. A lot of them don't. A lot of them don't trust them. A lot of them are lied to and say, we're going to do this, that, and the other. And then when they get in office, it's like, oh, no, I was just playing.
It's not even, it's not even that.
I'm going to hit after Jordan.
Most Black people can't even vote to get a politician, and that's
or
why
they choose not to vote.
I think a lot of times, sometimes Black people associate politicians with law enforcement. And since we already don't trust law enforcement, we bundle that up into the same, thing.
I know people who won't vote just because they feel like their vote doesn't matter or it won't count. Not because they don't want to. They just feel like, they could take it or leave it.
That's where this gets this conversation definitely gets tricky. It gets tricky because
we can talk on this forever.
It gets tricky because, right, you guys both have excellent points, right? The thing is that you guys both have going is he's right. We do need to educate our people. We do need to be more involved in our politics. On that same note, again, you got to think some of these people don't have jobs. They have minimum wage jobs, check to check. How am I going to feed my family, right? They're not thinking, oh, my son needs to be an engineer and he needs to be thinking ahead of time on how to fix thousands of miles of pipage throughout this community. You know what I mean? Like, if we're being realistic, like, say that happened near you, like, do you really, or is your son really going to draw up a blueprint? And I'm being so exaggeratory right now. So I agree with you on a point in the notion that we need to educate ourselves and we need to become, somewhat economic dependent, make sure we're electing people that are going to get it done. Because it's right. That's true. Like, it's not your kids, it's not your family. Some people do think like that. Like, I'm not gonna, overextend myself to help. That's 1,000% true. But again, the argument is true that if it had happened in, a wider minority or in not a wider minority, a wider community, it probably would have been fixed right now. And then we go to the other part that you guys just touched on is, politics and whatnot. That's super tricky because I do think we need to be involved more in politics, but at the same time, there's some stuff that goes on behind closed doors with, some of these people are placed there. Some puppets are placed there for certain reasons. They're kind of a coconut, black on the outside, got a different agenda on the inside. You know what I mean? So while I think that's true, we need to definitely look into our politicians and elect people from our communities that actually are going to, have a lasting impact. But at the same time, there is a deeper layer to that of things that go on behind the scenes, and it's not just clear cut like, oh well, we're not involved in politics. Oh well, the law enforcement is involved. Da da da. You get what I'm saying? I don't think it's just that black and white.
Right, that's
Yeah.
true.
Hmm.
All right, so sorry to cut y'all off, but we gotta get to his. It's about to be 3:50.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I was done. My bad.
I posted in the chat what my thoughts are. It's from, for me, it's page 10, but it could also be page 65. And and I'll just read the quote. Prison did not deter crime significantly, many experts concluded. Those who had meaningful economic and social opportunities were unlikely to commit crimes regardless of the penalty, while those who went to prison were far more likely to commit crimes again in the future. Um, 20 years ago, I would have disagreed with this notion completely, but I've lived in Georgia for 20 years and I left home when I was 18. So, in other words, I've spent more time in Georgia than I've spent in the country where I was born. And looking at this, I believe it. When I moved to Atlanta, I moved into Lithonia. And I remember me and my sister moving out when we started hearing gunshots. We moved to Gwinnett. Then from Gwinnett, I moved to Sandy Springs 16 years ago, where I've lived since. I have two kids, 9 and 10 years old. And there is a difference. There is a big difference. It's not just the white privilege, it's privilege, period. When you have privilege, whether it's due to your finances, your level of education, or your geographical location, and ultimately the color of your skin, everything is different. We have less liquor stores, uh, you know, per square mile versus when I was in Lithonia. Lithonia looked different when I moved in '96 than it does now. I'm in the process of closing on a home. Um, I'm looking at the house, and that same house, you know, in Decatur will probably not be worth more than $200,000, or maybe even less. And it probably will never appreciate value. And if it does, gentrification is going to take place, and the people who live in that neighborhood won't be able to afford it. So this redlining is real. The neighborhood I'm moving to is incoming, and I can tell you this: taxes in that area is 1%. Some of the richest cats live in that area, but why is it that the property taxes is 1%? And in some neighborhoods where they can't even afford to pay their taxes, they're some of the poorest neighborhoods. And the people who are in these neighborhoods are predominantly people of color, people that look like me. They're the ones that are in the jail cells. They're the ones that are awaiting trial. They're the ones that are being convicted of minor, or what I consider minor offenses, non-violent crime that shouldn't be doing the type of time that they're doing, that are not being rehabilitated necessarily by this prison system. It's not working. And I was shocked to find this passage where she touched on it, where she said, people who had meaningful economic and social opportunities are unlikely to commit crimes. And it's true, because regardless of their humble beginnings, it doesn't matter where you start. If you have that opportunity and your social and economic situation change, regardless of the color of your skin or whatever it is, you can make a way. But if you're like me, you're black, and your socio-economical situation is just messed up, you're just FUCKED. There is almost no hope for you. And then if you've been to jail, that makes it even worse, because now you may not be able to vote again. You're not going to qualify for what they consider, you will not be a prime lender as far as banks are concerned. There are certain jobs where like I probably wouldn't be able to get the job that I have right now. I'm a cybersecurity engineer. I probably wouldn't be able to get it because I probably won't pass a background check. You understand what I'm saying? So that passage really resonates with me on a very, 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 very different level. And it wasn't until I started studying American history and reading books and actually going to the source versus turning on my favorite news channel that I really started to understand, what systematic racism is, what it means to a Caucasian, or what it means to a colored person, and what it means to someone that's ignorant and someone who's just racist.
I just wanted to piggyback on the passage, because that was one of the passages that stood out to me too, and it's very valid. Doesn't matter what part of the country you go to. Like, if you have opportunity and options, then you're less likely to commit crime, because usually, not all the time, when you're committing a crime, it's because you are trying to get something or do something. Like, it's
Right. Or
usually
you have
money.
lack
It's,
thereof.
yeah, it's lack thereof.
That's
It's
right.
usually like a money motive behind it. Like, no one's like, oh, I have 3 million in the bank, I think I'm gonna go rob a bank today. It's usually not that. It's the feeling of despair, and like you have no other option but to sell these drugs, or to go rob this person, or break into these homes, or whatever the case may be. So if you have options and things going on, you're less likely to be like, oh, I have this full scholarship, so let me not go rob the bank, or whatever the case may be. So I think that passage was that kind of stood out to me too, about how, and it's so crazy to me that how so many people don't get that simple concept.
Hmm. That
Yeah.
is so true what you just said. Like, and it honestly is a part of the reason why I get so mad, especially when I was in school, like, and I even see it online, like it literally made me want to put hands on like wannabe gangster, wannabe, because it's like these people have to do that. Like, or they feel as if their interpretive framework, like they're like, this is all I can do. Like, I can't get a job. Like, da, da, da. So they really think like I have to do this. So the fact that these people that come from really good places, good backgrounds, have parents in their lives and whatnot, feel as if they need to, show that they're macho or manly, or I'm thug, I'm gangster. It's like, bro, like these people have to do this. Don't glorify this to kids that are, mentally susceptible to anything you might say. Like, a lot of these kids that's just what they're taught. You know what I mean? Like that, and like you said, like if you're, raised a certain way, or you're just in a better community, even when you get into trouble, you have different, options. If I'm being honest, like some of these kids
True.
do crazy stuff, but they're in such a good community. Their cops are, funded appropriately. They know the people in the community. Like, yeah, like he said, they're the same skin color. So it's like, hey, Jimmy, is that you? Why are you smoking pot? Versus, in our hood, it's like,
Hands up.
oh shoot, like we got it, yeah, like, I got it, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like,
Stop resisting.
it's it's definitely a lot different. Like, even for me, like I've had a lot more opportunities compared to some of my cousins. Like, I had a cousin um pass away, unfortunately, just because his sister, he wasn't even stealing, his sister was stealing. And in order to get back with him, like he wanted to go see this girl, and the people that his sister stole from was like, "Hey, well, she's over here. Like, come meet us here." And then they shot him on his way with a bicycle. You know what I mean? Like, it's had they grown up with me or near me, I doubt that it would have ever happened. His sister would have never been like, she wouldn't have been stealing. You know? So I definitely agree with that 1,000%. I probably should have picked that one as one of my passages.
Yeah, the neighborhood you find yourself in really matters. The second account that I had, being a foreign student, I'm a permanent resident now. The second encounter, in order to go to a Barnes and Noble that had the books that I needed to pass my certifications that I was taking, I had to catch a bus. I had to catch, no, 2 trains and 3 buses. So I would have to leave Lithonia and go all the way to Cobb Parkway to go to a Barnes and Noble that was like 3 miles away from the school that I was going to. And this was way back in, like, we're talking 1999. Okay. One night I was deep into the books, and I realized, well, damn, the last bus that goes to Art Center leaves in 15 minutes. I drop off the books at the counter and I dash out through Barnes and Noble with a backpack. By the time I got to the bus stop at the Cub Galleria, 5 police cars pulled me over with guns drawn, and I'm looking like, oh shit, it's happening again. And at this time, I was angry and frustrated. So I get it when people get frustrated, like, why y'all doing this to me, or why does this keep happening to me? And what I did was I just took my backpack, put it aside, put my hands up. I was surrounded by people, so I was beyond embarrassed, And I was like, I'm just gonna say one thing: y'all do whatever you want, but if I miss this bus, one of y'all is gonna drive me home, and I live in Lithonia, and I laid flat on the ground. And I have never felt so little in my life, and I have never been treated that way before that, other than the other time I was arrested falsely for driving without a license, even though I had a license. And the police officer, the whoever the supervisor was, he was talking amongst the guys, and he was like, you guys just put your guns away, whatever, And he walked up to me and he apologized. He said, when you ran out of the Barnes and Noble, someone called the police, and they claimed that 3 cars were broken into, and you fit the description.
Oh my
And I'm
God.
like, who called the cops? They're like, well, the person was anonymous. We didn't really get the person's name. I'm like, okay, were any cars broken into? They were like, well, we don't know what cars have been broken into. We haven't even checked yet. So somebody calls and claims that cars have been broken into. Nobody verifies, and and I fit the description. And y'all think the best approach is to pull guns on me? 5 police cars at the bus stop, and embarrass me like this. I'm an international student. I'm coming from Barnes and Noble. I'm missing my bus because of what y'all doing. But do you know what this white cop did? He apologized. He had every one of his officers apologize. And he personally drove me from Cobb County all the way to Lithonia. He drove me home. And when I got home, and my sister was scared shitless. She was like, what the heck did you do again? In a period of a month, you've been picked up by police twice, and he explained to her, it's not his fault. He was trying to catch the bus. Somebody called in. It was a false alarm, and we did not respond the way we should have. We shouldn't have drawn guns on him. We shouldn't have pulled him. We shouldn't have done that, And both times, it was the white cop that did the right thing. You see what I'm saying? But it still doesn't make me feel any different. I still felt debased. I still felt like my life didn't matter. And if not for the way that I handled it, if I had resisted, or if I had struggled, or if I had done things a little bit differently, I probably would have been shot. I probably would have been dead. Who knows? This was my second encounter with the police in my life. And if I had prior knowledge that people were getting killed for speaking up or whatever, it would have been different. I probably would have been even more scared. But I had no knowledge of this. I was a proud African, but it still happened to me, even though despite my beginnings and whatever, well-traveled and everything, it still happened to me. And it is still happening to people today. And like someone else pointed out, they're just adapting and adjusting the system to meet the times, but they're still doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we finished. Everyone's finished speaking, so I'm pretty sure our meeting is finished. I wanted to touch on what you said. Um, I've had similar experiences, and it's sad to hear a similar experience. I remember my followers teaching me how to drive, and we had went late at night after he finished whatever he was doing, and we went in an apartment complex near us, and someone called the cops on us, I guess, saying like we were like I don't know, scouting the area out or something like that, and the two cop cars like rushed in like super quick, like, and was like lights on like around our vehicle. I'm like, I think I was like 15 at the time. I'm like, oh shoot, and my dad, like, he has dreads, dark black guy. I'm like, is this like where it ends? And I know that's extreme, but it's like it's not, because it's like I don't know what happens next, what could happen next. Even on campus last year, I was walking around downtown on the Atlanta campus at night. I forgot what I was doing, and there was like something I was taking a picture of on the ground. Like this cop like pulled up next to me, and he was just like giving me like a hard stare. Like I was like, bro, like where do you? I'm not doing anything. Are you good? So it's definitely true. Like there's again, it's sad to hear another account of someone facing something similar.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
people take like a lot of things for granted, like the fact that they can feel so comfortable with law enforcement and things, and people wonder why, like, well, you just need to trust them, like just trust the police. And I'm like, no, that's not really the best way to go. I mean, I have four brothers, one older and three younger, and like the fact that I constantly worry about them and my younger brothers, they grew up entirely in the neighborhood that I was raised when I was in like high school, and they were raised there since they were little, like in elementary school, kindergarten. I was raised in elementary school and going up through middle school in Oakland. So we didn't really grow up in the exact same way. And so I worry about them having to get pulled over because they are all three really tall, like 6 feet, black boys walking down the street at night or riding their bikes at night in this like predominantly white neighborhood. And I remember I was in high school and me and my best friend, she's sort of like the wild one, and I'm like really quiet and shy. But she was like, let's go to this party. And I'm like, I don't really party. We go to test tomorrow. That's not my cup of tea, but I guess. And so we go to this party, and there's like these older senior guys and like smoking pot, and then like there's some like people in the back outside, and they're like smoking, and then people are dancing and X, Y, and Z. And then the police show up, and I'm scared because I had never been to a party. I wasn't even supposed to be at this party. My mom thought I was at a sleepover. So I'm like, okay, I don't really know what to do in this event. Like this is like my worst fear. And so we leave, and me and my best friends, I guess there was like a curfew in the city we were in. And the city we were in was even more predominantly white than the one that I was in, which was like I didn't really know that because we had just moved there. And so we dash forward to try to get back to our neighborhood and like get to the bus so that we get home. And so we're running, and then the cops are sort of just like letting everybody go, like, okay, this is your warning, get home safe, da 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 da. And then this one cop car turns around and starts following us, and then they turn the lights on and the siren, and then we all get scared and we panic, so we run. And so when we ran, I'm like, what do we do? Does one of you have something on you? Did one of you bring something? And then she's like, no, none of us had, because none of us smoked or none of us did anything like that. We just wanted to go to this party. We were like sophomores or juniors. And so we're running, and then the cop pulls up, and I'm scary, but I'm also fast, and I ran track. So I hide behind a bush. And so I'm like hiding behind this bush, and I'm listening because I can see the cop car, and they pull up next to my friend, and he's like, I'm tired of chasing you little bastards around all night, and da 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 da. And I was like, why do we have to be all that? Because the kids that you just politely told to go home were white, and you just told them to make it home safe. This is a warning, but you're threatening to give us a citation and call our parents and calling us bastards and all this other stuff. And it was just like an awakening, like a wake up call. Like, wow, this is like kind of, I don't think this is right. I mean, we shouldn't have been out past the curfew. That's true, but the way that they handled us in regards to the way they handled the other kids that were at the party was like totally different. And that's when I was just like, I'm probably not gonna grow up the same way that those kids are gonna grow up. And I never went. Right, because we're bastards, but they're just the coach's daughter. She's so wild and reckless. It's okay, just get home. But like, why are you out at night? I'm sick of chasing you bastards around. Like, oh, okay. We
You
hadn't
even
even
see
gone
that
that
with news
far. We were
articles.
like 3 houses down. It's like, okay.
I'm sure y'all have seen that with news articles. I'm sorry if you weren't finished. I thought you were done.
No, you're good.
Like you've seen with news articles, like one news article would be like, young African American thug robs da da da, and then another one would be like, uh, principal's daughter makes awful mistake, regrettable decision.
Yeah.
Like it's like, why is the verbiage so different?
Well, like even the person whose house the party was at, was white. It was like one of the older senior guys was having the party at his house, and it was just like, y'all turn the music down, all right? Let's just get home, guys.
Yeah.
But then it was like me and 4 other friends were all black, and so we're walking home, like trying to get to the bus stop. And then, I mean, when sirens flash behind you and you're not supposed to be at a party and like you've never gotten in trouble before, it's kind of scary. So we're like, you know what?
Definitely.
Let's just go. And so we start speed walking, and then, you know, the sirens cut on, and we're like, okay, at this point, does one of you have something? Like, what did we do wrong? None of us had fought or smoked or done anything that night except dance and be out past curfew. And I had never been to a party ever. So I was like, still like kind of shook. So I'm like, this is like my worst fear. And my mom's gonna kill me. And I'm supposed to be in sleep right now. She thinks that I'm in bed. So this is like, I don't know what's going on here. It was like, I don't know, it was just real eye opening. Like, I'm never gonna be
Well,
treated like they're treated. And I just have to get used to that.
you're right, Alexis, because I got pulled over I think 2 years ago, like 1 minute away from my home, and the police officer. The reason he pulled me over is because we were both at the light. My phone rang. I have a GPS in my car, but we were both stopped, and I couldn't see the text, so I removed my phone from the holder, looked at it, and put it back. And then he pulled me over, and he's like, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I'm like, "I don't know. You tell me." And he's like, "Well, you know, there's Georgia law now. You're not supposed to be interacting with any device in your car, blah, blah, blah." And it was like, "Do you live in the area?" I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "Do you have your ID, your driver's license?" I was like, "Okay," and I give it to him. The next thing is his attitude changed completely when he realized that I live right down the street, and the Sandy Springs police station is right across the street from my apartment complex. He came back with just a warning, and he said, "Well, you know, just to let you know, FYI, it's been the law now for the last year or so, but you know, just drive safely." He was awfully polite when he came back, and he was white. But what if I wasn't living in a neighborhood? What if I was younger, and what if I was dressed like a gangster, what would you would stereotype as a gangster or whatever? How would that conversation, how would it have gone down? He probably would have written me a ticket. He probably would have asked me to step out of the vehicle to check to see if there was, you know, I mean, it could have gone down a couple of ways.
Contraband.
Exactly. So really, your geographical location, your affluence, your white privilege, or your financial status, all these things, a lot of times goes into play as to how your interaction is going to go down. Or if you're from a part of the neighborhood and you find yourself in the wrong part of the neighborhood, like, oh, you're in the white neighborhood now, oh, you're in the hood now, and you white. God forbid, you know, you might get killed because you're in the black hood, you know, and all these stereotypes, they don't work, you know. But I really think that the only thing that we are sure that we can impact is our kids and the people in our circle. If we can all collectively educate one another, and when I say educate, I'm not saying make people look like they're stupid, but truly educate with the intent to teach them something and giving them time to absorb it, and actually, you know, meeting them where they live, you know, so they can understand where you're coming from. I think that that's the best approach, because for the people who are already racist, there's really not much you can do about that. For the people who are already being prejudiced, they've been prejudiced for 60 years. They're not going to change in 3 minutes or 3 hours. There's not much you can do but inform those people and then decide if you want to associate with them. But for the people who you can change, the younger generation, the kids, the young cats who are, you know, who are quarter to getting incarcerated, to talk some sense into their head and being a role model and showing that, look, I can identify what you've been through because I walked in your shoes, and help them get onto the path. I think that is better than waiting until they get incarcerated before we start trying to figure out, well, where did we go wrong? You know, prevention is better than cure. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I want to touch on that next week when we have our conversation about the culture of black people. You know, some racist people use it as a way to, you know, demean us, but I do think there is some percentage of truth of, you know, just having a culture that doesn't encourage education, economic independence, wealth, etc. But like I said, I'll get into that next time we talk. I'm gonna head out. It was amazing. It was so amazing having this conversation and interacting with everyone, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I really loved hearing everyone speak, everyone's point of views, their backgrounds. Truly, I do. And I think that's about it. If anyone has any questions for me, ask them. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and head out. Nice to meet you guys. And yeah,
It was a really good conversation. Feel like a hamster in this house because of this whole COVID stuff.
true.
Getting to talk to people. One, because I don't have any friends out here because I literally just moved out here not too long ago. I'm like, okay, this is cool. And not a lot of people like to talk about this type of stuff, like outside of a class. And this is stuff that I actually enjoy talking about. So this is really dope for me.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm glad we didn't get an idiot. I low key thought we were gonna get some bigot, and I was gonna have to tear him to shreds in the Zoom call. I'm not gonna lie.
You know what? I feel like white privilege is just a myth. Like, no, see, that's where we're gonna have to stop. We're just gonna have to stop.
Cause I hit you with them facts. I hit you with them fact uppercuts to the chest, to the jaw.
I think we need to
Making our backgrounds like graphs and charts and data on why they're wrong.
Yeah.
Right here.
I think I'm in the wrong group, actually.
Like, yeah, Egyptians are actually black. I have proof.
Yeah.
You know, but it's been really great, you guys. I'm glad that my kids, my nosy kids, did not interrupt. That's why I have the background. Because they be
Oh,
trying to,
okay.
they be nosy, you know. But it's been awesome, and I really look forward to it. I'm sorry that I wasn't up to speed with regards to how we're going with the reading, and it's confusing because the book at the top has a page number at the top, and it also has at the bottom.
Yeah. In the
So,
ebook, but there's
That's
like
all good.
multiple
No
versions of the
worries.
ebook. So my friend was trying
yeah.
to read it with me last night to help me get through this stuff. And so he was reading like the Google ebook version, and I was reading the ebook version that the teacher provided, and it was just a mess. So
Yeah, I think that once we're done with this first assignment and we get our grades back, we'll kind of get a feel for what we did right and wrong and recalibrate ourselves. And I
Yeah.
think he will be fair. I believe that he really would be fair. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we got a pretty good system going on.
Yeah.
The whole-
Alrighty, well I gotta
All right,
go. I have
guys.
to take a
I'll
stuff.
share the video recording with everyone, and I know that Jordan got the notes sorted out on the
Yeah.
Google Doc.
All right. Peace out. Peace
All
out.
right,
Everyone have an
Yeah.
amazing night.
You too.
Yeah, you guys have a great night. See you next week.
Good night.
Thanks. Peace.